No doubt. It isn't 7 o'clock.
Hang on a second.
They just said.
I got 23 seconds left. Very punctual on the clock here.
Yeah, the address. Yes.
Yeah. That's all right.
All right, call this meeting to order. Please rise for pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore? Here. Mrs. Thompson? Here. Mr. Morris?
For the last time here.
Mr. Bittner?
Here.
Mr. Shaboo?
Here.
Mr. Lunder?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here. For the minutes from the regular meeting of council from November 28th, 2023, we're gonna hold off on that because there's some revisions that need to be made. Is there any correspondence tonight, clerk?
I have no correspondence.
Does any member of council have correspondence tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to administrative and department head reports. Mayor and Safety Director, Mr. Eva, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Johnson, members of council, the public here this evening. I'll start off with the fire report for November. For November 2023, there were 84 calls for service, 18 fire service calls, 66 rescue EMS calls. Of those 66 calls, 7 calls for invalid assist, 2 calls for an overdose requiring Narcan. Department training for November, EMS drills were presented by UH Lake Health. The topic was pediatrics. Department shift drills for the month of November, EMS had dementia and pre-hospital implications. The fire had burned protecting the protectors. In November, we had personnel that attended the annual hazmat conference in Solon. They also, the Dollar General and Chipotle, the site plans were approved. Also in November, we had 2 anniversaries, Andrew Leach, 1 year, and Joe Tennyson, 1 year of service with us. Mr. Lunder had a question. I mentioned Jason Trapp, talking to him from ODNR, and I did look further on the information as far as grants. The coastal management assisted grants are offered through the Ohio Coastal Management Program, and it's a minimum 1-for-1 match. And a non-federal match is required. Funds are provided on a reimbursement basis. Proposals are due in September, October, and funding is for projects beginning no earlier than July 1st of the following year. So, we could submit something this September, October, but again, it's gonna be a 1-for-1 match or anything with the ODNR grants. That concludes my report tonight.
Okay, Law Director, Mr. Lyons, good evening.
Good evening. I submitted an update to our city income tax ordinances as required by Ohio House Bill 33 that was passed in September. It makes really technical changes to it. There's no change in tax rates, but it does address some issues. Very can't tax anybody that imposes city income tax on anybody under 18 years of age. It also clarified filing for an extension and when an extension has to be granted. There's net profit allocation, cleanup work that's done in there, and then topic near and dear to Mr. Lunder and my heart, it also talks about penalties for late filing fees. It caps it at $25 for a late filing fee, for each month with a maximum of $150. And it also says that the first time that you waive, the municipality has to waive the late penalty fee. So there's a lot of words in that particular ordinance, and if we could pass it before the end of the year, that's probably the best situation. I did talk to one of the administrators, and they say that they are already doing this, but but this will get into our codification, so that it'll be codified, if we pass it before. Other than that, I have no.
Thank you. Questions for the administration? Hearing none. We move on to board committee commission reports. Parks and Recreation did not meet. So Planning and Zoning Commission.
I guess we met. On December 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m. In attendance was Suzanne Cason, Mike Sweeney, Brent Moore, myself, Gary Leonard, Dave Viva, Jim Lunder, Michelle Moore, Rob Johnson, Paul Morris, I think I got everybody, and several residents. Mario Barr presented a request to amend his conditional use permit. He requested additional hours for the outdoor patio and for a band. The hours was approved, but the hours for the outdoor music was limited to 10 p.m. by the commission. Ninja Sushi and Abashi Restaurant requested the renewal of their conditional use permit, and it was granted by the commission. The Summers Group presented their new plans and drawings for Cranes Landing. With a lot of discussion and input from residents, their plan was tabled until the next meeting. The commission requested additional information. Next meeting is January 8, 2024 at 6 p.m.
Okay. Committee of the Whole.
So the committee of the whole met on Tuesday, December 5th. We reviewed the CRA ordinance for number 893. We're ready to send that back to council for a vote. And then we also looked at the tree ordinance, or I'm sorry, the right-of-way ordinance. I misstated that. The right-of-way ordinance, everything on that appears to be in line with that and the new tree ordinance, and those are ready to be presented back to council for a vote.
Okay, were there any other board committee or commission reports? Hearing none, we'll move on to open to the public to speak. If you'd like to speak, please come to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Again, this is your opportunity to speak to council, not a back and forth discussion with council.
Okay. This is Monahan, 7359 Salida. Nice to see everybody indoors instead of out on the blustery parking lot of Metro Beach Park or over at Lake. It's a fun night. I understand this is the last council meeting of the year. I wanted to take a moment to thank Mr. Morris and Mr. Shaboo for their lengthy service to our city. They've been excellent representatives of our community, dedicated public servants, joy to work with, and they will be missed. I also want to thank our clerk of council, Joy Sachs, who I believe is retiring, probably because some of us drove her crazy the past few years. I hope that's not the case. Regardless, may enjoy a quieter, less stressful next chapter, Joyce. I think our city leadership and the community have learned a lot in the last few years. Those of us fortunate enough to attend meetings in person and become more involved have recognized missed opportunities and the importance of being engaged. Our leadership has hopefully recognized that the community seeks elected officials who truly listen to and properly represent their constituents. Leaders who talk about what they can do instead of what they can't do. Leaders who don't make decisions based on fear. Leaders who work towards a vision that maximizes our community's assets and creates a vibrant waterfront community. On that note, I would be remiss and deemed unpredictable if I didn't reiterate that I remain against the rezoning of the Creighton property and the Cranes Landing project. Although some may have thrown in the towel, I have not. And I know some are working on it to ensure a coastal feel to any future development, which is wise should this project proceed against the bulk of the community's wishes. To me, the fact that the Summers Group continually presents incomplete documentation, agreements with ambiguous and or conflicting language, insufficient architectural details, etc., all after having at least 5 additional months to professionally compile the necessary paperwork should be telling. These materials for submission are deemed standard for any developer proposing a project to a municipality. It's interesting that during roughly the same or perhaps even shorter time frame, Dollar General and its representatives had no problem presenting a clear, concise plan, development agreement, and detailed architectural renderings. That is the norm. And they have long completed that process with the city and already started construction. And they certainly had a great deal of community pushback on their project as well. Regardless, they got it done, and professionally so, and even with accommodation for community desired architectural upgrades and other enhancements. The PUD was created to provide for higher quality development of a site to, among other things, encourage creative approaches to the uses of land and related physical facilities that result in better urban design, higher quality construction, and the provisions of aesthetic amenities. I do not see that at all with this current potential craze project. The proof is in the pudding, and the pudding has been missing ingredients and is messy at best. Further, if Mayor Eva truly intends to pursue reacquiring Meadow Beach Park, there is even more reason to hold off on approving a different use for the corner than originally intended. Our small city is greatly impacted by every little decision made, much more so than other larger communities. I trust council will continue to be vigilant when reviewing this project. I look forward to working together in 2024 in an environment where different opinions are not viewed as adversarial or personal attacks. I feel I have a respectful, friendly relationship with most of you with whom I've communicated, even if we disagree on certain issues. As always, I thank you for your dedication and hard work, and truly wish you and your families a very happy holiday.
Anyone else? Hearing none, we'll close this portion of the meeting and open to the public. Legislation before council, resolution number 2023-R-33, that is still assigned to the council of the whole. So we will pass over that for now. Resolution number 2023-R-40, if you could please read it by its title.
Resolution number 2023-R-40, a resolution accepting the rates as determined by the Lake County Budget Commission for tax year 2023, authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the Lake County Auditor and declaring an emergency.
This is a revision to add in the extra levy that we now have for the parks. Is there any discussion on this?
Does this have to be to the auditors by a certain?
Yes.
Do you want the money?
Yeah.
Is there a motion to
Yes.
suspend the rules?
Motion.
Motion made by Bittner, seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Shaboo for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-0-07, if you please read it by its title.
ordinance number 2023-0-07, third reading, amended, assigned to council of the whole. An ordinance creating new ordinance 1022.12, local tree lawn regulation not involving utilities and or telecommunication devices.
Okay, this has come out of committee of the whole. The only change was removing the grandfather clause and referring it now to chapter 1036 for the trees. Is there a motion to amend as presented?
I will second.
Made by Mr. Bittner, seconded by Mrs. Thompson to amend as presented. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Motion made by Mr. Morris,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Shaboo for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-0-22, if you could please read it by its title.
ordinance number 2023-0-22, third reading, assigned to ordinance committee. An ordinance amending codified ordinances 1036.04A by creating new section 1036.04A4 in order to regulate and describe trees that may be planted on tree lawns or within the public right of way.
Okay, and you had an amendment to this?
So the ordinance committee came up with two amendments to this, section A, changing it from 5 feet from any underground line to 10. Then uniform, and also in section H, changing minimum of 7 feet to also 10 feet from the edge of the road.
Okay, and what was the reasoning behind changing from 5 to 10?
Reasoning was keeping it uniform altogether.
Uniform altogether, define, well, explain
So
that.
we have a 10 foot from the hydrant, 10 foot from the edge. Well, now it'll be 10 foot from the edge. The overhead was 25, so that wasn't into it. Everything was 10 in here. Corner lot, that was 10.
Consistency.
Okay, I will say that if you make it 10 feet, you basically guaranteed there will be no trees on the tree line. Because if the water line runs underneath the sidewalk and the tree line is 10 feet, you have basically eliminated trees on the tree line and we just spent a bunch of time doing nothing. Now, so I'm going to vote no on amending this, but you guys can vote however you wish. So there's been a motion to amend. Is there a second to the motion to amend?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Shaboo. Roll call on the amendment, please.
Mrs. Moore,
No.
Mrs. Thompson,
No.
Mr. Morris,
No.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
No.
Mr. Lunder,
No.
Mr. Johnson,
No. Okay, so now is there a motion to approve as previously presented? Without the amendments, or is there another amendment somebody wants to make?
I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve, okay, by Mrs. Thompson,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Morris to approve as previously presented. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
No.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-23. Do you please read it by its title?
Ordinance number 2023-0-23, third reading, assigned to committee of the whole. An ordinance amending codified ordinance 893.04, exemptions for community reinvestment area.
Okay, you should have all received the final version of this after the changes we discussed at the committee of the whole meeting. Is there a motion to amend as presented?
Motion made.
Second.
Made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mrs. Thompson for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
No.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-0-25, that will come back later as well. This is currently in the planning and zoning and then committee of the whole, so. Ordinance number 2023-0-26, if you could please read it by its title.
ordinance number 2023-0-26. An ordinance levying liens for expenses incurred for lawn maintenance and or culvert repairs.
Any questions on this?
Motion to suspend.
Second.
Motion to suspend by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-0-27, please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-27, second reading. An ordinance amending codified ordinance 250.11, health benefits and declaring an emergency.
Any discussion on this? Yes.
Do these benefits take place January 1?
No, it's, we're still negotiating, but it looks like the rates will go up. So we'll have to increase what we have in there. And that's what this one is.
Do you know when they're supposed
I
to go
believe
up?
it's June.
Okay.
But, you know, we're looking at this now because we have the budget.
Okay,
This ordinance simply sets a maximum that the employees would have to pay. So,
And that's increasing from 150 a month to propose possibly 200 a month as the cap.
it's the cap.
Right, yes, right. Because we increase it, and we're looking at the medical costs, right?
Is there a difference in the cap if it's an individual or a family, or it's 200 across the board?
We looked at it, this cap would probably affect family plan, not so much the single, but and
Anything else on this?
motion to suspend.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Thompson, second by Mr. Morris for suspension of the rules. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, second by Mrs. Thompson for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-0-32, if you please read it by its title.
ordinance number 2023-0-32. An ordinance to amend the 2023 payroll ordinance 2023-0-03 and declaring an emergency.
Does the administration want to speak on this?
sure. We were in the process of hiring a part-time housing zoning inspector, and we didn't have this category in the payroll ordinance, so this would add that category to the payroll ordinance.
Any discussion on this?
So this would kind of be time sensitive, because you're looking to do this.
Yes. If we can get this through, please.
Motion to suspend.
Second.
Motion to suspend made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Bittner. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
No.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Motion made by Mrs. Thompson,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Bittner. For passage, roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-0-33, if you could please read it by its title.
ordinance number 2023-0-33. An ordinance to amend the 2023 appropriation ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Does the administration want to speak to this one?
Yes, this is an annual adjustment to the fund balances to show the actual balances. It's just moving money between accounts to get the right balances.
Any questions on this one?
Motion to suspend.
Motion made by Mrs. Thompson,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Second.
Made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-0-34, if you could please read it by its title.
and ordinance number 2023-0-34. An ordinance amending various sections of chapter 891 in order to update the city income taxes ordinances so that they are in compliance with Ohio House Bill 33 and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Lyons already spoke to this. Does anybody have any questions on this?
Motion to suspend.
Motion made by Mr. Lunder, seconded by Mr. Shaboo for suspension of the rules. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Also for passage. Seconded.
Motion made by Mr. Lunder, seconded by Mr. Shaboo for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Okay, is there any old business tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. I'd like a motion to amend to add on. Go find it here. Resolution number 2023-R-41. I'll pass it out to everybody.
Motion made to amend the agenda.
Pass those down, need a copy. Oh, I need a copy. That's what. Okay, motion was made by Mrs. Thompson, second by Mr. Bittner to amend the agenda. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. I will now read it by its title. Resolution number 2023-R-41, a resolution commending Joyce M. Sachs for outstanding service as clerk of council. Whereas Joyce M. Sachs has provided exemplary service as the clerk of council since 2013. And whereas Joyce M. Sachs previously served as clerk of council from 1986 to 1988, by the way, Bittner was like in kindergarten. And whereas Joyce M. Sachs previously served as assistant clerk of council from 1996 to 2013. And whereas Joyce M. Sachs has managed to keep the president of council of the city of Mentor on the Lake organized, on task, and mostly well-behaved. And whereas Joyce M. Sachs has announced her intention to retire at the end of 2023. And whereas Joyce M. Sachs has agreed to stay on for a few months to aid council until a new clerk of council is hired. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the city of Mentor on the Lake, county of Lake, and state of Ohio, that this council on its own behalf and on behalf of the administration and citizens of the Mentor on the Lake would like to express to Joyce M. Sachs our sincere thanks and gratitude for her dedicated service to the city of Mentor on the Lake and for the professional manner in which she has served the city, and wishes her all the best in the future and wishes her a happy retirement. Section 2, that this council extends its best wishes to Joyce M. Sachs and her family for many years of happiness in the future. Wherefore, this resolution shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage by council and approval by the mayor. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Seconded.
Made by Mr. Bittner, seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
For passage.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mrs. Thompson for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Yes, do I have to stand up?
I will let you stay.
Thank you.
Office of the Mayor, City of Mentor Lake proclamation. In recognition and appreciation to Joyce M. Sachs upon the occasion of her retirement. This proclamation is made to Joyce M. Sachs as a testimonial of her commitment to the City of Mentor on Lake's City Council, which began on February 11th, 1986. We'll have to check our dates, I don't know. And formally ending December 31st, 2023. And whereas Joyce M. Sachs began her service to Mentor Lake as an assistant clerk of council on February 11th, 1986. She served in this capacity through July 15th, 1998, when her family relocated their permanent residence to the state of Pennsylvania. And Joyce M. Sachs reestablished residency in Mentor on the Lake, and she restarted her tenure as clerk of council on December 2nd, 2013. And the city of Mentor on the Lake today honors Joyce M. Sachs for her service and dedication she exhibited in the role of clerk of council, and the city of Mentor on the Lake wishes to extend to Joyce M. Sachs its deepest gratitude for a job well done and best wishes for many years of happiness in the future. Therefore, I, David R. Even, Mayor of the City of Mentor on the Lake, and on behalf of city council and our citizens, publicly goes on record as commending Joyce M. Sachs for her outstanding efforts and service to the city of Mount Holly Lake.
And now, for our gifts,
Oh, no.
we have gifts.
Oh, thank you so much. You guys, thank you. Oh, keep me warm.
Wine glasses,
Nice.
outstanding service, Mentor on the Lake Council Clerk 2013 to 2023.
Thank you so much.
Wine to drink.
Also,
Not during the meeting, unless you're sharing.
okay, thank you all very much. I truly appreciate all of this. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your service
Thank you, yeah.
and keeping me mostly well behaved.
I tried, but I tried.
Okay, next up. Motion to amend the agenda for 2023-R-42. Passing that one down.
Make a motion to the agenda, amend the agendas to add resolution
Second.
23 R-42.
Motion made by Mrs. Moore, or Mrs. Moore, second by Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo.
Abstain.
Mr. Lunder. Mr. Johnson.
Aye. All right, I'll read this one again by its title. Resolution number 2023-R-42. A resolution commending Dave Shaboo for outstanding service as a council member for Ward 1. Whereas Dave Shaboo has provided exemplary service as a member of council since 2014, and whereas Dave Shaboo has worked diligently to represent his constituents, and whereas Dave Shaboo has given his time, energy, and ideas on behalf of the city, and whereas the city of Mentor on the Lake is a better place because of his contributions, whereas Dave will be leaving council at the end of his term, December 31st, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the city of Mentor on the Lake, county of Lake, and state of Ohio, section 1, that this council on its own behalf, on behalf of the administration and citizens of Mentor on the Lake, would like to express to Dave Shaboo our sincere thanks and gratitude for his dedicated service to the city of Mentor on the Lake and for the professional manner in which he has served in the city, and wishes him all the best in the future. Section 2, that this council extends its best wishes to Dave Shaboo and his family for many years of happiness in the future. Wherefore, this resolution shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage by council and approval by the mayor.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules
Motion to suspend.
made by Mrs. Moore,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore.
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo.
Abstain.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Motion made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Lunder. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore.
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo.
Abstain.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye. Okay, now we have to amend the agenda to add on resolution number 2023-R-43. If you please, I'll
I'll
read
make
it
a
by its
motion.
title.
I'll make a motion to amend the
I will
agenda.
second.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Moore, second by Mrs. Thompson. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore.
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Abstain.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo.
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye. All right, I will read this one now by its title. Resolution number 2023-R-43, a resolution commending Paul Morris for outstanding service as council member for Ward 2. Whereas Paul Morris has provided exemplary service as a member of council since 2015, and whereas Paul Morris has worked diligently to represent his constituents, and whereas Paul Morris has given his time, energy, and ideas on behalf of the city, and whereas the city of Mentor on the Lake is a better place because of his contributions, whereas Paul Morris will be leaving council at the end of this term, December 31st, 2023. Now therefore it be resolved by the council of the city of Mentor on the Lake, county of Lake, and state of Ohio, section 1, that this council on its own behalf and on behalf of the administration and citizens of Mentor on the Lake would like to express to Paul Morris our sincere thanks and gratitude for his dedicated service to the city of Mentor on the Lake and for the professional manner in which he has served the city, and wishes him all the best in the future. That this, section 2, that this council extends its best wishes to Paul Morris and his family for many years of happiness in the future. Wherefore, this resolution shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage by council and approval by the mayor.
Motion to suspend.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Moore, seconded by Mrs. Thompson for suspension of the rules. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Abstain.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Bittner, seconded by Mrs. Thompson for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Abstain.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. I want to personally thank both Mr. Morris and Mr. Shaboo for their service. You've been outstanding members of council. I know we haven't always agreed on every issue, but I think we are a much better city because of your service. So I thank you both.
You're welcome.
All right, we will now go to request for proposals, a comprehensive plan. We should have all received that. And you guys voted to move forward with a request for proposals. This is now approving the verbiage of said proposal. Are there any questions on this? Is there any motion to approve the verbiage of the
I'll make a motion
request
to
for
approve.
proposal? Motion made by Mr. Morris. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Bittner. I will remind everyone that all 6 of you voted to move forward with the request for proposal. I was the only one who said no, because I don't actually believe you guys will. Prove me wrong. Okay. Motion has been made and seconded, made by Mr. Moore, seconded by Mr. Bittner. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
No.
Mr. Lunder,
No.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Okay, the request for proposals moving forward. So it's now in your hands. We can further discuss whatever, if you feel any changes need to be made, a date will have to be decided. That's still left blank in there as to when to request them back by. Okay, we also have, everyone should have received a copy of this. Ohio going to do our Munson Road. Since it is their state road, this is 2023-0-35. We're not gonna try and pass it tonight. This is just gonna first reading, but I do want to amend the agenda to add it in, so that it does have first reading tonight.
Motion to amend.
Motion made by Mrs. Moore, seconded by Mr. Bittner to amend the agenda. Oh, sorry, made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Bittner. To add it to the agenda. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. So.
Is this, I'm sorry, I had,
Sure, you have a question?
does this have to be filed by a certain date according to this email?
January 29th.
29th.
Okay.
That's why I wanna
Returning
put
the
it on first
legislation
reading
at your
tonight.
earliest convenience, January 29th of 2024.
I signed off on the draft already, but we have to give them the certified copy of that.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on this? All right. Any other new business tonight?
I would like to make a motion to discuss an amendment to council rules, section 22. The open to the public portion. Currently, gives 10 minutes per person to speak. And I would like to make an amendment that we reduce that to 3 minutes.
Okay, there's a motion to change the open to public to speak only to 3 minutes from 10 minutes.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on that?
Do we know what other time limits other cities have?
3 to 5.
3 to 5.
My preference would be to limit it to 5 minutes per person. And then if we need to change it again, we can always change it in the future, but right now there's a motion to change it to 3 minutes made by Mrs. Moore, seconded by Mr. Shaboo, or was it Lunder? It was Lunder. Okay, Lunder. We'll go with that.
Further discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, you go first, you.
I prefer to see it at 5 too, because some topics take a little longer than others. I have been under the pressure of the 3 minute thing, and sometimes you just can't get everything in 3 minutes. So I think 5 would be a better step.
I will remind everyone that the chair does have discretion to
Extend that.
extend that. Council can always overrule the chair, but
That was kind of gonna be my point, is I like the 5 as well, with the option of chair can extend it. If he needs to.
okay, so there's currently a motion. So we will vote on the motion, which is to limit it to 3 minutes. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
No,
Mr. Morris,
No.
Mr. Bittner,
No,
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
No. The motion fails.
I'll make a motion that we change it to 5 minutes.
Motion made by Mr. Morris. Second by Mr. Bittner to change it to 5 minutes. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
I,
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye. Okay, council rules have been amended. Any other new business tonight?
I have one thing, and it's something to think about on your break. The Charter Review Commission will start up in 2024. I will ask the fire department, police department, and us as the administration to put some thought into looking at the charter to see if there are any discussion points or ideas that they collectively may want to change in the charter. I would ask council to do the same thing, take a look at the charter, see if there's anything in there. I will get a hold of, I know, speaking with the elections board, there's some inconsistencies in there as far as filing dates and the number of signatures to get the file. So I'll get the information on that and pass it to the Charter Review Commission, but just something to think about. Since we will get organized beginning in January for that.
Okay. Anything else for new business? Hearing none, we'll now move on to open the public speak. John, this is your opportunity to come to the lectern, state your name and address for the record, speak to council. Now you only have 5 minutes, but no. If you'd like to come, please do.
That 5 minutes begin next year.
Nope. We passed it, moved on.
I might recommend in a clock. So you can see a clock, I can see a clock. I'm Jeff Chick, 7533 Salida Road. I wanted to join in Susan's congratulations to Mr. Morris and Mr. Shaboo. I first became participating a little bit in this activity because of the zoning and planning activities that were happening affecting Andrews Road. And Mr. Shaboo never missed a moment, and Mr. Morris never missed a moment to bring their thoughts out and to hear our thoughts. And I really thank you for that. It's a part of participatory government, and you did that well. I'm looking forward to staying involved with everybody, your new council and the new administration, and moving forward on projects that have been so exciting to be a part of so far, and I'm happy about that. It's my impression that the city has modernized and improved its ordinances and its zoning dramatically over the last 5 years. Not just in 1 year, but for a long time, and that is evidence of everybody's hard work. So you should all feel good about that and about yourselves. I'm really excited about Lobo Park. I don't think anybody cannot be excited about Lobo Park and what might happen there, and the derivative of that going forward for what it says for our whole city. The concept that was brought up last meeting, and I've heard other conversations about maybe us getting Mentor
beach park back under our ownership really changes the view of the entire city and what that does for our commercial district. And we'll get on the Munson Road side of our commercial district over time. I know that'll happen. But for me, one of the more exciting things that happened is just now, you as a council said, we're gonna look forward with a comprehensive plan. The mayor's office and council was hampered by not having a long-term plan. And I had the benefit on Monday morning to be in a meeting with David Anderson from the Lake Development Port Authority and Mr. Eva, where we heard long-term discussions about their plan and what the city of Willoughby did with a 10-year plan. And then another 10-year plan, and then another 10-year plan. They did not look to next year. And I'm really happy that we're doing that too. Look beyond, go beyond the horizon to see what's possible. Man, owning that park, so many other things. What can be done on Munson Road, great stuff. And I'm really pleased about the charter review committee that you mentioned it tonight. And I would ask one suggestion, as a person who's not overly skilled in the internet, is it possible to make that as evident on our webpage as we have made the need to have a form filled out for the planning and zoning committee meeting? Can we move that forward in our Facebook presence and in our webpage presence? What is the city charter right now, so that people can look at it, become available or familiar with it? And then also the names of the people who are on the review committee to help the participation increase over the next year as you look at that issue. Thank you. We're under 5.
You weren't. That would cut you off if you weren't. Anybody else like to speak tonight? Hearing none, we'll close this portion, open to the public to speak. Announcements and settings and meetings. We have the organizational meeting of council Thursday, January 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m. The agenda meeting will be Thursday, January 4th, 2024 at 7:45 p.m. The charter review committee will be meeting Thursday, January 4th, 2024 at 8 p.m. We are going to need to move the public hearing for ordinance 2023-0-25. So now let's discuss when we should move it to. Our options are the 23rd of January or February 13th.
January. Because that will give planning and zoning the opportunity to meet in January. And then give us some weeks to digest it.
Yeah, my thought would be February 13th, because I don't really believe the Summers Group will finally have it all wrapped up by January.
I would agree with the 13th.
So I'd like to not keep moving it along, so. Anybody else? Anybody else's thoughts on that? Mr. Lunder, Mr. Bittner?
13's okay.
Okay, we will move it to February 13th for the public hearing.
That's on 2533. That's what we put.
Well, the only public hearing is on the ordinance itself. Yeah.
That's the
But, yeah.
PUD.
Right. Okay, anybody have any other meetings to add to the agenda?
Mr.
Oh,
President,
wait, one more thing. Next regular meeting of council will be on Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Okay.
Before the adjournment, if I may take a moment, I'd like to thank the residents who supported me and let me represent them and for more too on council. I'd also like to take time to thank people that considered me for mayor. I'd also like to impart some parting wisdom, hopefully to everybody here, including you, Mary. There's a comment that I believe Councilman-elect Skip Gray brought up multiple times about a citywide ditching program. Even though I could not find a specific ordinance, I know it's mentioned multiple times in 1024 about a citywide ditching program. And I know long before you came to city council even, there was a ditching program where the service department went through with a transit, the backhoe and a dump truck. And they would check the ditches along the different streets so that by the end of the year, they covered most of the city. I would think that that would go a long way in preventing a lot of homes from being flooded before these storm sewers can actually get fixed right. So hopefully you'll consider bringing that program back because it is in our ordinances. 2, for council, you folks are gonna be saddled with a lot of responsibilities. Mr. Shabu and I get to kind of sidestep those.
Sit down in the audience and watch.
And there's kind of a couple pearls of wisdom that I've run across since being on council. One is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Think long and hard before you approve what you're going to approve. It affects a lot of people sometimes. And listen to the residents. This isn't your city. It's not the mayor's city. It's everybody's city. We have sat here and listened to a lot of people complain that they don't want Crane's Landing. They didn't want the dollar store. Well, you know, we couldn't stop the dollar store, but you can stop Crane's Landing. You do not have to apply the PUD to that property when you vote for that. Keep that in mind. Listen to the public. This is their city too. They're equally as proud. And I know everybody wants to do what's best for this city. So please think about it before you vote for or against that. Make sure this is what you want to do, because it'll be years, decades, centuries maybe before it's changed. Thank you.
Planning and zoning is gonna be January 8th, right?
Yes.
6 P.M.
Planning and zoning, January 8th, 6 P.M.
I have no speech. Let Paul do it.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by
Second
Mr.
it.
Moore, second by Mr. Shuhon. Adjourn. Yeah. Roll call, please.
Yeah,
Aye.
go. I-
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Absolutely.
Mr. Bittner, Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
No. We are adjourned.